history, feminine energy, if you take the time to look at the history books, feminine energy is power, yeah? Feminine energy is power, Bodicea, Cleopatra, beyond. And I think there is a reconnection there, with menopause. I think there is a moment for us to stop and just think, actually, hang on a minute. Is this a time for me to give up or to give whatever is left? Versus, is this a time for me to take? Is this a time for me to step into power? And I don't mean power in any kind of crazy. I don't mean power as in force. I mean power as in, genuine energetic power, right?
Welcome to the Menopause Mastery Podcast, a show for women just like you who are ready for more health, vitality, passion, living life with a purpose. I created this show because I knew that women just like me in this second season of life, the season of menopause, are really tapping into their deepest desires. And we're ready to harness our physical and mental health and explore what our true passions are and peel back the layers to uncover exactly what we want out of life. I'm your host, Betty Murray, part geek, part magician, and your new medical bestie with a dash of sass. I love taking the complex science and making it easier to integrate into daily life. So let's join the journey to make this season the best ever.
Oh my gosh, Mel, I am so excited to talk to you because of who you are and where you've been in the world. And I think my listeners are going to love it. So tell me a little bit about how you got here. You've had a varied past like all of us, and I'd love to hear your story.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks, Betty. So, hey, I have had a pretty eclectic background in terms of my professional career. And I guess in the the latter chapter of my professional career, I've been in this world of digital transformation. So I've been working with really big organizations on complex transformations and working in particular with the leaders. And I guess, the key thing to my area of value where I really help in terms of advisory, in terms of consulting and mentoring and coaching is with the leaders on mindset shift. And I've been working with the leaders on mindset shift, and hence me being the author of Modern Mindset Shift. And that is really important for the conversation today, I think, because modern mindset shift in the work that I do with organizations, with leaders, females and male, gender agnostic, all over the world, public sector and private sector, and sometimes with big organizations, it's really about helping leaders to, number one, understand who they are. Number two, be okay about leaning into the desire and the dream of where we want to go. And also then to help them practically put a pathway to get from now to there. And you might go, oh, Mel, there's 1,000,001 people on the earth that are doing that at the moment. And I totally get that. But I think what is really important to me, which brings me to, I guess, the world of, midlife and females like yourself and myself and so many of your listeners is that there's a huge amount of wealth and value in ancient wisdom. There's a huge amount of wealth and value in emerging technology and leveraging technology. So technology doesn't control you, but you are the master of technology. And also there is a huge amount of wealth and value in something so much more modern and nascent, which is neuroscience, which is neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. We can change and stretch our mind, but we also can create. And those three things for me are really, really important. So I've been doing all of that with leaders, female, male, agnostic of gender in organizations all over the world for the last 10 to 15 years. But then 4 years ago, things changed for me. And, I guess I hit a wall. I guess, I can look back and say I hit a wall. Did I know that at the time, Betty? I don't think I did. But I just had these implicit symptoms, these tiny little things that were happening and in and of themselves were nothing. But when they came together, there was a massive shift that was that was happening in my life. And I had a choice. I had a choice to either allow it to take hold of me or I control it. And I thought to myself, gosh, while I've done my 10,000 hours with, my day job, could I use some of that knowledge, some of those techniques, some of those practices and disciplines, see whether they could help me in, what I was going through. So I did, and it didn't all work. But more often than not, it did work. And I learned something that over and above, what you hear and what you read about, and over and above the medical side of things, I recognize that what's inside of here and what's inside of here is all within our capacity for growth and control. And that's so transformative. So I've talked a lot there, but anyway, there we go. So that's kind of where I come from, Betty.
Okay, awesome. It's so obviously we're talking a little bit about that transition through menopause and that experience. I would say I had a tech background and then went back to school to go into the medical field and specifically nutrition. So I kind of I embraced the idea of, technology in my world because I had lived that professionally. But, it's an interesting thing to kind of look at the ancient wisdom, the extraordinary growth of technology, which I definitely want to get into. But the piece that you kind of mentioned was that your own personal transition through menopause, right? And that, personally, I felt this sort of opening up of my experience. I didn't have really awful symptoms, that a lot of people talk about, but it was all of a sudden I felt like I was channeling some data and some information that I know didn't have available to me then, which prompted me to start this podcast and all these other things, because I was like, I believe women in this season of life have an extraordinary capacity to create change in whatever they find valuable and necessary in the world, and that we just need to embrace it and find those avenues. And you obviously do that. So what I'd love for you to do is kind of explain how you unpack that ancient wisdom and that digital technology. Because I can tell you, I have a lot of clients in my age group that are terrified of the digital technology that's happening today. And I'm embracing it. I'm all over the place with AI and everything. But can you help people sort of unpack that,
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it'd be really interesting for your readers to know that. So I'm born and bred Welsh. So I'm Welsh. And a lot of aunts of mine were druids, right? So, I'm not going to go into religion or anything like that, but the reason why I mention that is that, in terms of ancient wisdom, even when I was a really young child, there was a acknowledgement that the feminine power was real and to be respected by all, young and old and across gender. And also for the individual woman, the real, the female. I'm not going to say matriarchs, Betty. I'm going to say the female powerhouses around me. My mum being one of them. It was this real sense came into themselves. They flourished into the latter years, and so many women in modern society with the narrative that is in front of us we're being fed this this narrative, which is, gosh, you go through the menopause and then all of a sudden it's kind of like the downward slope. It's the slowing down. It's the ever so slight dehydration of who we are and what we are and how we look and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, that's not where I come from. That's not how I was brought up. So I had that confidence, right? So I had that belief in the back of my head. So I think for me, the ancient wisdom piece was natural. My grandfather was both a surgeon, but he was also a homeopath. So he also had that alternative piece in his belief system. So it's natural to me. So if it was natural, I went there, right? If it was natural, I gave it a go. And I felt that it was equal to a paracetamol or a tablet or a painkiller. I was just like, well, let's have some tea, or let's do something which is herbal or alternative. And I think that's really, really important. So the ancient wisdom for me is more to do with the ancient wisdom that comes from the historical, really ancient historical female archetype power. We don't, it's not getting older and getting weaker. It's getting older and getting stronger. So that's what I mean by that. Whereas a lot of people would talk to ancient wisdom for some beautiful, beautiful reasons around, yoga and, and all of the ancient wisdom that comes from different areas of life and different societies and different cultures. And that's brilliant. And bring that in. I call upon it. But for me, it was more about it's more about the female power and getting into that wisdom of the female power. So that's really important to me, really, really important to me.
Now, how do you help your clients, look at this new digital world and go, gosh, I need to embrace it, right? I need to embrace it. And I would say my word would be harness it, So tell me a little bit about sort of your perspective of how you work with your clients around that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing is about connection, isn't it, Betty? The first thing is about connection. And, and for me, I always look back before I look forward. And, when I'm working with a client, I always say, well, there's going to be somebody in your life that and you remember from your childhood or from your formative years, where you're listening to what they're saying and they're looking at you and you're embracing something that is new and of, de rigueur for you. But they're going, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? But you are doing something that's new and you are embracing that for yourself. And I think that tapping into that connection with remembering that you were somebody that was bringing something new to your parent, to your older sister, to your older brother, your sibling, your parent, your guardian, whatever. And they were looking at you going, that's change, that's new. What are you on about? But actually, that's where you are now. So I think the first thing to do is always think about connection. Think about connection. Think about the connection story. It's so incredibly important because we all have a connection story where we can look back and think, when I first saw something that was new and was really exciting to me, and I took it to somebody that was older and they looked at it and they looked at me and they thought, what are you talking about? But actually, that was that curiosity, that was that real energy for change, that real energy for newness, that real energy for transformation and metamorphosis and evolution. So connection is really important. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I think that is so important for me when I work with my clients is once you tap into the fact that you were once somebody that was into change and wanting change and curious and, and not the other person on the other end that you might be now. The next thing is, how on earth do you journey into that? How on earth do you start on that? Especially when we're going through a time of life like, menopause, which is increased cortisol, so therefore increased anxiety, sometimes sleep patterns are just completely and utterly erratic. So many symptoms. I don't need to talk about that because I'm sure that you have gone through that before with different people on your podcast. But the key thing is, how do you navigate all of those symptoms with this, coming back to and remembering this curiosity? How do you get back into it? And it's small. It's small. It's the tiny, 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 tiny little pieces. It's the tiny little shifts. It's the 1%. 1% of our day, 1% of our working day is equal to 10 minutes maximum, So it's really important for me when I'm working with somebody to first get a connection with curiosity, get a connection with possibility. And then the next thing is, okay, let's start with the smallest thing. It's not about how much I need to do. And boy, as women, we're constantly talking of how much we need to do because we're juggling all of these plates and we live with so many identity hats. And actually, it's tough, to bring it down to what's the minimum amount of shift for me to make a difference? What's the minimum amount of shift that can make me feel better? What's the minimum amount of shift that can take me from here to there. And I think it's really important to work, with ourselves and with others on the minimum viable shift. Super, super important. And I know also you alluded to the kind of tech thing, and I'll probably take a break here and just, I'll come back into that because, that's another thing. But I think the reconnection is the first thing, which is incredibly important, to reconnect with curiosity and dreams and possibility. But we tend to forget that tiny, progressive, repetitive shifts are a heck of a lot more powerful than just thinking about how much do I need to do, which is very much a part of the way that we live our lives as females, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, that, you just kind of summarized a whole philosophical way of really looking at how to embrace this time period. Because, I mean, statistically, we are going to be potentially, if we had children, we might still be managing children. They may still be at home, or they could be boomerangs where they left and came back. But a lot of us are also caring for elderly parents. If we aren't right now, we have or we will. And we are spinning all these plates, and how to really kind of look at it in a way that makes it manageable, small, manageable chunks. So going back, like even to that technology piece, and, because your professional experience obviously is helping people embrace that sort of digital world. But I think your idea of connecting to it, and then also recognizing that you were that really curious, really excited individual at one point where anything that was new was super exciting. And that you could re-embrace. I mean, yeah, it's like that one statement is like, okay, oh yeah, I was probably that way when I was 16 years old, and my parents and grandparents couldn't understand me, didn't appreciate it, probably. But that you could reconnect with that individual and then take minuscule steps to understand and move within this world, because it is moving quickly. But I think if we can bring our wisdom, intellect, and all of our experiences that we have stuffed in our own personal backpack and bring it into the dramatic changes that are happening into our present world right now, our influence will be greater as women. And I think we need that feminine energy. I think the planet, if anything, especially the things going on right now, need that feminine connective energy. And it is I think women in our age group that have the ability and activity to do that.
Without a doubt. I mean, Betty, look at history, right? If you look at history, feminine energy, if you take the time to look at the history books, feminine energy is power, yeah? Feminine energy is power, Bodicea, Cleopatra, beyond. And I think there is a reconnection there, with menopause. I think there is a moment for us to stop and just think, actually, hang on a minute. Is this a time for me to give up or to give whatever is left? Versus, is this a time for me to take? Is this a time for me to step into power? And I don't mean power in any kind of like, crazy. I don't mean power as in force. I mean power as in, genuine energetic power, right? And I guess, the other thing as well, I mean, if you want to go into the energetics of it, I was reading an article last week, Betty, and it was really, really quite powerful, really quite interesting how it was talking about there isn't any major medical statistical evidence to prove why a human being, male, female, or any gender, would die at a particular age. And yet, in America, in the UK, in Europe, every country has an average mortality age. But then you look at the blue zone work that, and we've got, people in all of the blue zones in the world. Of the readers that aren't aware of the blue zones in the world are those areas where there are centenarians, people that live to the age of 100 and beyond at a high concentration. But then you look at ancient history and then it goes beyond that, right? So there's no actual medical, scientific reason why we should age. But there's a big thing in here. There's a big thing in our brain, that if the average age of mortality is 83 for men and 85 for women, then the average people will die around about in and around about that age. But what if we hack that? And that's where we start to get into the world of bringing mindset and the whole technology piece into thriving through this time of life into what could potentially be, for some of us, if not many of us, the best times, bringing in that tech, the word hack. Yeah, there's, oh gosh, Betty, there's so much in there.
Yeah. It's funny because obviously the Blue Zone Netflix series, just played out. And if in Blue Zones, they've been doing that research since the early 2000s. I think the first publishing was like 2008. And as a nutritionist, right? So I'm watching it, and even in the Netflix things, he's like, people are going to start focusing on what tea did they drink? Wow, it's the purple potato. Oh, it's the but really, when you start looking at it, and then you look at all the Blue Zones that were put into these groups and looked at, mindset, connection, community are the real drivers, are truly, truly the real drivers. Those other, diet, living in a high elevation actually, and having varied terrain and having to walk and be physical, and those things made a difference. But the three underlying in all communities was that connection, was that community, and that sort of shared experience, and the mindset that you're still valid, you're still part of the community, you're still important. Those are the things that really allow us to thrive. But then we can use the technology like functional medicine and all these other things to optimize our biochemistry to help work in a way that works, right? So obviously I'm on that side with the science part of it, right? Not even the science, more so the biochemistry side of it. But you jump into the mindset, and you have a particular method, your TEA method or T method, T mastery. Tell my listeners a little bit about that, because I think that's the mindset shift people need to start making.
Sure. So T mastery. So TEA, time, energy, and attention. And I think, for me, one of the things, Betty, that I've realized is that T, time, energy, and attention, if we're able to, and actually every single one of us is able to master these elements, then what we're doing is we're giving ourselves the strongest foundations for thriving into the future. So, I'm not here to be a big kind of like abundance, this is the wealth, this is the thrive zone. No. What I'm saying is time, energy, and attention are the fundamental cornerstones of being able to thrive into the future, being able to make a choice for where next, and being able to manage and control. So time management. When I say time management, what am I talking about? I'm talking about controlling time. I'm talking about how many of us feel and live our lives through the lens of time. When do I need to be here? How much time have I got before I need to do that? Well, if I do that at 5 o'clock, then I'll be ready to pick up the kids at 6 o'clock. And we flow through this kind of swim lane time. It's the wrong way around. It's totally the wrong way around. So the first thing for me is to really hack into time management and to break it down completely with people that I live with, work with, and then bring it back up from there. So time is really important. And the other thing as well is that once you break down time and the way that you think about time from a mindset perspective, your belief system around time, what you start to recognize is that it does not control you, you control it. And the moment you start controlling time, the less time becomes linear. You start playing around with it. I mean, I'm a flow practitioner. So, I know what it means to get somebody into the zone, right? So, when somebody is into the zone and when I'm in the zone, I can be working and I look at the clock and, oh my gosh, 3 hours has gone past and I feel like I've only worked for like 20 minutes. So time is an illusion. So time mastery is really important. So that's really, that's the first thing, because a lot of anxiety can come around time. That the whole concept of time can create anxiety. So if I can break that down, and if we can work on that and make it non-linear and start controlling it, that's really important. The next thing is energy. E is energy management. And this one is really important because I think that, when you think about emotions and, hot flushes and, the anxiety that comes up and it builds up and you're not in control of it. You're not in control of when it happens, And when it happens, you're not in control of it, right? That's energy. That's energy cannot be created or energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be changed from one form to another. And I think the most important thing for us to recognize is that if we can recognize it, we can change it. If we can recognize it, we can take it from here to here. And that's the most important thing for me. Are you spiraling up or are you spiraling down? So energy management is really important. The fluctuations that we have, the uncontrollable fluctuations, can be controlled. And sometimes, not always, without drugs. And I think for me, it's certainly in terms of the subtle symptoms that I experienced, I was able to manage the fluctuations of energy through non-medical interventions, morning routine, evening routine, time management, mastery. The final one, Betty, is the A, which is attention management. Attention management is probably the one thing that everybody will be familiar with, which is the brain fog, right? I can't remember what I was about to say. What was I talking about? What was it? So it's that clarity, it's that attention, it's that recalibration. And absolutely, without question for me, when you put ancient technology, emerging technology, and neuroscience together, those three things give you the capacity to recalibrate how you focus on things. What do I need to focus on? And what is most important to me? And what is my purpose? And that's really important. So time, energy, and attention, T mastery, essentially the use of ancient wisdom, ancient technology, ancient techniques, emerging technologies, mobile phones and all of that kind of stuff, apps, but also neuroscience and what's coming out of neuroscience to help us to really foundationally anchor time, energy, and attention so that we have got increased choice in order to build and design the next phase of our life. Really lean into our desires and our dreams for where we want to go to.
Yeah, I love that. That's fabulous. Fabulous. So I know that you've got some special gifts for our listeners. I believe you got a 2 documents that share your kind of morning and evening routine. Can you tell them a little bit about what those freebies are? Because we'll put links in our show notes for those. Because we talk a lot about routines and things like that, but having one that we know works, that has been used time and time again with your clients, would be awesome. So tell them what they expect.
Absolutely. So my morning routine is and evening routine. I just, the top 10 things that I engage in and use, it's really important for me, I think, in the morning routine, how you start your day is so important. How you end your day actually gives you a springboard into your sleep patterns and your health, your sleep hygiene, and that then is circular, isn't it, into how you wake up in the morning and where you go from there. So it's all circular. One is not more important than the other. Hey, that's really important, Betty. A lot of people that I've worked with have said, can I just do the morning routine because I'm a morning person, I'm going to do that now. Or I'll just, maybe I'll just I'll go for the evening routine because, I like waking up at night, and I like when the kids have gone to bed. This is when, when I get my high energy. But I think they're both equally as important. So the two documents that I'd love, to share with everybody are essentially the 10 top techniques that through trial and error have really worked for me. And that's not, just through the time of life that I'm in, but they are really powerful, important techniques for thriving in the modern world that we're living in, right? Where it's incredibly difficult to know what's real. There is mass white noise around us. We're all trying to reconnect with who we are. We're all trying to understand what real truth means. And we are all trying to be as healthy as we possibly can. So I think, for me, is how you end your day and how you start your day are super, super important. And whichever way around you want to put that is entirely up to you. So the two things I'd love to share, my trial and error top 10 tips for a great morning routine, and also my top tips for an evening routine. What I will say is something that how many of your readers have tapped into. But one thing for me that's been incredibly powerful is the 5 Tibetan rites. So I've spent many, many, many years as a yoga student, day in, day out, and I absolutely advocate it. However, I was introduced about 5 years ago to the Tibetan rites, and recognized that actually this is something that not only can be a minimum standard of movement and a little bit of meditative practice, but it can also be a warm-up for a yoga routine as well. So I think, for any of the readers and the listeners of your work, I think it'd be really, really good to tap into the Tibetan rites. And I said that, I could see that you were like, I could see a nod on your, so you've obviously tapped into them yourself, Betty.
Absolutely. A lot of people may not know this, but I taught yoga from about 2001 to 2010 and traveled around the world and studied with different practitioners. But, the Tibetan rites, for anybody, even if it's like, I don't do yoga or I've never done that, it's a movement pattern that just wakes up your entire body. And it's a meditative movement, and it's beautiful, and it's designed to really help anybody move, but get the body and kind of lubricated and ready for the day. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful 5-10 minute routine, and, good to go, but I have people that I work with that are in their 80s still doing it, with no problem whatsoever. So yeah, it's a great tool.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I love it because as you go through there's 5 key exercises to the Tibetan rites, and you can work yourself up. You can start at 7. You can work your way up to 20, 21. Iterations of each of those 5 stages, each of those 5 exercises. What's beautiful is that at the end of that, those 5 exercises, you have woken up your entire spinal cord. You've woken up your entire spinal cord, and I think that's something that's really important. Because you stand tall, you got confidence. You stand tall, there's more possibility. You believe in more because you're standing tall, right? It's the power pose. And the Tibetan rites can give you that, really, really pulling you up, which is so important for all of us, in particular as women going through midlife.
Absolutely. Well, and that's our super highway back and forth from the brain to the rest of the body. So if you want it to communicate properly, it's got to be lubed up and warmed up. How about that?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. So Mel, if people wanted to find you, where can we find you online?
I'm available on LinkedIn. So I'm available on LinkedIn at Mel Ross, Nee Scott Taylor, which is my maiden name. And then I'm available on Instagram as Modern Mindset Mentor, modern.mindset.mentor, and also on YouTube as Mel Ross, 1111.
Awesome. And Mel, this has been such a fabulous conversation. And everybody, she took time away from a trip in Sicily to have this conversation, which I'm just so jealous of because I've not made it to Sicily yet. I want to thank you for taking time out and chatting with me. It's been wonderful.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Bessie. And I am just so pleased that I've been able to have a chat with you and all of your listeners. And yeah, there's a blue sky here. I'm about to head back to the UK, and I believe it's about 10 degrees there, whereas we've had 32 degrees here in Sicily today. So I'm just, really, really, really happy that I've got short sleeves, and I'm about to put my big bully jumpers on when I head back to the UK. But yeah, it's been beautiful here. So it's been a pleasure. I'm so delighted to be here with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Menopause Mastery. And you can check everything in the show notes to find Mel and to get her recommended start time and end time evening activities. We'll have those documents linked in the show notes. And I thank you for listening to Menopause Mastery. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Menopause Mastery podcast. You are why I'm here, and I am so very grateful. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any wisdom on creating the most exceptional life on our terms. If this episode has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend to spread the love, and together we rise. You can follow me on social media at Betty Murray, PhD, and you can reach me online at bettymurray.com.